The ballerina, the English critics Mary Clark and Clement Crisp once wrote, is the figure who is traditionally the pinnacle of the ballet. Lincoln Kirstein, who co-founded the New York City Ballet with the choreographic genius George Balanchine, was a bit more expansive. Quote, originally an Italian word meaning girl dancer, it has come to signify in every Western tongue an outstanding female soloist in a traveling company, a ranking principal in an opera house, as well as a symbol for the whole of classical dancing. We can pull two words out of these definitions, pinnacle and symbol, and these pretty well capture what we expect of that being we call a ballerina. To define her in more detail is difficult because as it is said of snowflakes, each is singular. Newcomers to the form think that anyone in a lead role wearing point shoes and a tutu is the ballerina. This is not really true. And so we argue over which principal dancers in our classical companies are the ballerinas versus principals who are quite capable, but maybe not that exciting, or who are technically stellar, but not all that interesting. It's very subjective until it's not. Margot Fonteyn, mistress of the golden mean, with her regal restraint and charmed sense of proportion, was symbolic of English character. Suzanne Farrell, her elemental classicism, ardent and abandoned, scaled to make of space her own airy, was fearless musical response at its pinnacle. The mid-century Soviet icon, Galina Ulanova, who seemed to draw power from her many flaws, symbolized the strange transitional reverberation between Russian soul and Soviet selflessness. Natalia Makarova, when it came to phrasing and shapes that plumped and rose like fresh bread, she was a pinnacle of unforced Vaganova school purity. We can write such sentences about any woman we believe to be a ballerina. Moreover, every new ballerina on the horizon, with new physical properties, timbres of technique, and her own relationship with energy, expands the paradigm. When I began to prepare this talk, I decided to get a little inspiration from that incomparable ballerina movie, The Red Shoes. The film was a huge phenomenon when it was released in 1948, and in every generation since, it has brought new aspirants into the studio, visions of sugar plums and swan queens dancing in their heads. As I was scrolling through my iTunes library, the movie Black Narcissus caught my eye, another favorite. This is the film that Michael Powell and Emmerich Pressburger made in 1947, a year before they made The Red Shoes. It is visually voluptuous, yet psychologically sharp and true. And while it uses early Technicolor to dazzling effect, the atmosphere is misted, otherworldly, balletic. I clicked on it, and in doing so, something else clicked. I realized that Sister Clodagh, the ambitious young nun played by Deborah Kerr, she too is a ballerina, and not just because of her refined beauty and dauntless posture. Cloaked throughout the entire film in a pristine white habit, its folds and line never in disarray, Clodagh has been charged with heading a group of sisters in a doomed mission. She is to start a school and a hospital high in the Himalayas, in a palace, no less, that had once been home to a Raja's harem. Carr, of course, is mesmerizing in her wimple, as was Audrey Hepburn 11 years later when she played Sister Luke in the 1959 film The Nun's Story. You may recall that Audrey began her career as a ballet dancer, and the character of Sister Luke, whose need to be intellectually superior overrides everything, jibes with the ballerina's quicksilver competitive edge. In Black Narcissus, however, Carr's sister Clodagh is the sister superior, and she is up there in the Himalayas in the very same setting as Marius Petipa's Kingdom of the Shades, the White Act from his 1877 ballet, La Bayadère. Mountain snow caps all around, moon-blooming Eros multiplying ad infinitum in opium dream refractions. Idealization, inebriation, infinity, bound in one body, the ballerinas. In Black Narcissus, in its snowbound Christmas scene, a crystal sconce fixed to a white stucco wall suggests an ice castle, an ice kingdom. Sister Clodagh, at the top of the female hierarchy, is indeed icy and crystalline, but fire, desire, still lives under her taut white habit. Both Carr's Sister Clodagh and Hepburn's Sister Luke are purified by superlative performance. At the same time, their poetic selves are contoured by passion. This is a ballerina. We can think of classical dance technique as a habit, a daily discipline, and the core as a murmuration, a hive, a coven, a convent. Most ballet dancers will not become ballerinas. The sisters of the corps de ballet, they will expend their energy in either hope or hostility, as Lincoln Kirstein suggested in an essay of 1984. He writes, quote, "Half the force and efficiency of a supporting corps is fueled as much by resentment as by ambition. Fury at failure to advance or achieve a desired status is not negligible as a source of negative energy," unquote. These women are the Willies of Giselle, murderous manhunters. Classical dance draws power from tensile oppositions, life after life, reality fantasy, west-east, awake dreaming. Here is another opposition, positive, negative. The landmark ballet in which the modern ballerina was born, which saw a wayward wood nymph rising to the tip of her pointed toe, is 1832's La Sylphide. Here was a new kind of positive energy, ethereal and transporting. But the scandalous and sensational springboard to La Sylphide occurred 1 year earlier in a ballet that was part of a Meyerbeer opera of 1831 called Robert le Diable, Robert the Devil. The dance was called the Ballet of the Nuns, and it saw a corps of licentious sisters attempting to seduce a young man into sex and sin. Here was negative energy, prurient and dark. Marie Taglioni starred in both. She was the abbess in 1831 and the Sylphide in 1832. Our modern ballerina is complicated. Sensuality and spirituality, the harem and the convent. She is multifaceted, which implies countless refractions. Is it any wonder that her crucible is a hall of mirrors? This is Phoebe, the aspiring actress who comes in at the end of the movie All About Eve, taking an imaginary bow in a three-way mirror, already a ballerina. For some reason, when I sat down to write my essay for the exhibition catalog, I went first to the poems of Emily Dickinson. Perhaps because she, too, was a ballerina. Small, slim, bird-like, she wore her hair center-parted, smoothed down into two wings over her ears, very much the style of a romantic ballerina. She made the comparison herself in a poem titled, "I Cannot Dance Upon My Toes," which told all the ways she wasn't a dancer, and then ended by proving that indeed she was the prima ballerina. Dickinson loved nature and did socialize at home, but over time she went out less and less. She was isolated in space, in a small room where she wrote at a tiny wooden table. It almost constitutes a small stage, one big enough for a pirouette or a single arabesque. Dickinson's small writing space, however, opened onto limitless riches. As she wrote in this short poem of 1862, "'Tis little I could care for pearls who own the ample sea, or rubies when the emperor, or brooches when the emperor with rubies pelteth me, or gold who am the prince of mines, or diamonds when have I, a diadem to fit a dome, continual upon me." Earthly treasure, she is saying, is nothing compared to the wealth of the artist, whose imagination embraces the universe. Royalty and aristocracy wear crowns and diadems. So does the ballerina. And her diadem does not merely measure the size of a country. It fits a dome, which is the celestial sphere above and around us. The ballet dancer is trained on rond de jambe and pirouette, her port-de-bras based on curves and circles, and her movement corridors are akin to the orbital paths of celestial bodies, demilunes, hemispheres, ovals, and ecliptic rings. The ballerina, then, is the most perfect human embodiment of musica universalis, or harmony of the spheres, an ancient philosophical concept that found in the sun, moon, and planets, in the constancy of their movement, a state of music. In the centuries since the ballerina's reign began, that diadem to fit a dome has been continual upon her. So, the ballerina is a symbol and a pinnacle. She is, in the sorority to which she belongs, which is to say a ballet company's female classical dancers, head girl, mother superior, queen bee, queen. She is royalty, but the realm she rules is all space, the stage, the surreal, the subconscious, the stars. This multivalent space is exactly where the artist Joseph Cornell fixes the ballerina. Are we surprised that Cornell, whose boxed assemblages hold creation's vaults and waters, secrets of nature, and desires never meant to be more than air, revered, studied, and befriended ballerinas? Cornell was a ballettomane who devotedly followed his favorites. Tamara Tumanova, Zizi Jeanmaire, Allegra Kent, and who lionized the legendary romantic ballerinas of the 19th century. He was never literal. For instance, his work of 1940, Taglioni's Jewel Casket, is based on a story of how one night she danced in the snow for a Russian highwayman. Cornell embodies the memory by creating a grid of glass ice cubes, winter's diamonds. It is edifying to note the company that the ballerina keeps in Cornell's oeuvre. He loved birds, from bright warblers to exotic parrots to nocturnal owls niched in shadow. He was compelled by Medici princes and princesses, by hotels and classical and celestial maps, by rough-hewn dovecotes and handsome palaces. All of these themes, in one way or another, express migration and dislocation, nobility and eternity, transience and transport. Cornell understood that the ballerina was less a person than a metaphysical entity or deity, her dimensions deepening and enlarging with every role she danced. The rarefied air in his magical glass-fronted spaces, this is the air she breathes. Dimensionally, most of Cornell's boxes are a bit smaller than the flat surface of Emily Dickinson's writing table. Smaller still are the charming jewel boxes that have traditionally graced the dressers of little girls. Open the lid, and inside, spinning in the position we know as sous-sus, a tiny ballerina in a tutu pirouettes to music, usually something by Tchaikovsky. And just a reminder, the ornate, small theaters of the past were called jewel boxes. This is a shot of London's Apollo Theatre. Whether or not the young recipient of one of these little white or pink boxes has been to the ballet is irrelevant. It seems to be almost limbically understood that the spinning figure, statuesque and solitary in a cozy theater of melody and velvet, exists outside everyday norms and inside the imagination, that mirrored box filled with glinting, gleaming reflections and refractions. This is the amazing tutu from Balanchine's Diamonds, made by Karinska. Just as nestlings are born knowing the meaning of certain silhouettes overhead, so this silhouette, body straight as a scepter, that wreath or ruff of tulle at the hips, is accepted as one that quite naturally presides over a realm of riches, because she herself is a kind of jewel, a glittering sum of movement, music, sculpture, theater, all gathered in the Apollonian energy of the artist. The ballerina's wordlessness is part of her physical containment and grace, and as she moves from role to role, her poetic power increasing with her repertoire of metaphors, sylphide to swan, fairy to femme fatale, confection to contemporary it girl, and so much more. Silence keeps her mystery intact in a world growing ever more cacophonous. Silence keeps her symbolic. Cool in her snowflake geometries, reflective light beaming from the cuts and facets of ballet technique, écarté, croisé, effacé, épaulé, she crystallizes her country's aesthetic values, classical muscle memory, and native musicality. She is a gem of her culture. Balanchine brilliantly made the same point when he created a ballet in 3 acts, Emeralds, Rubies, and Diamonds, and named it Jewels. He has cited as inspiration the 6th of the Cluny Unicorn Tapestries, titled To My Only Desire. It shows a woman removing jewels, or returning them to, no one is quite sure which, a box. In the ballet he made, its 3 acts are a parure, and his ballerinas are the jewels. He knew that these gems belong not to him, but to the audience. Circling back to Black Narcissus, there is a scene about halfway through the movie in which the nuns discuss the young Raja and the opulent jewels he wears daily. Emeralds, says one of the sisters of his outfit that day. Beautiful emeralds, the deepest, most beautiful green I've ever seen. The subject sends Sister Clodagh pirouetting back into her own past, to a night when she is going to a dance and waiting for the young man she loves. Her grandmother presents her with an heirloom that will one day be hers, emeralds. The renunciation of a nun, the humanity of a fairy, the sensuality of a swan, the autonomy of an empress, the light of a cut stone, the power of a poet. The ballerina is a star of civilization. When the couturier invokes classical dance in a design, a pinnacle, a symbol is at hand. Thank you.